Welcome to the very first episode of the Hormone Shift Show. I am so excited that you're here. My name is Leslie Duffy. I'm a functional wellness practitioner, registered nurse, and life coach for women over 40. So today we're going to talk about something that many of my clients reach out to me for: weight loss resistance. Many of my clients are midlife women who are juggling a lot of things. They've got careers, they've got kids, families, etc. And they can't seem to lose those final 10 pounds or 20 pounds. They are doing everything right. I will say that many clients come in and they're telling me that they're tracking their macros. They're looking at everything they put in their mouth. They're exercising. They're doing everything possible in order to lose the weight. By the end of this episode, you're going to understand what's causing the weight loss resistance, because it's not a matter of discipline. And you're also going to get a 4-step plan in order to get your body to respond again. In future episodes, we are going to talk about what other levers could be stopping the weight loss, but today we're just going to talk about one in particular. Sometimes it's not what you're doing, but it's actually what you're thinking. Stress is the basis of our hormone landscape. It really supports all of our other hormones. And if you could think of it as a triangle, at the bottom of the triangle is our stress hormones. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to understand what is going on. Why is stress so important in this equation? Because it's not always what you eat. Sometimes it's what you're thinking and what you're experiencing in your day-to-day life. So like I said, we want to think of hormones as this triangle. And at the base of this triangle is your stress hormones. Stress is like eating a Snickers bar without the fun of a Snickers bar. And you can't lose weight if your life is a dumpster fire. That is one of the things I tell my clients all the time. And we want to break this down into 2 parts. So the first part is, let's define dumpster fire. What is a dumpster fire for you or for what you're experiencing? I actually use a tool called the Holmes and Raw Life Stress Inventory, and it gives me a score of what you might be going through. It takes things like life experiences that are extremely stressful and rates them on a scale of 100 down to 11, I believe. And at the very top is the loss of a loved one or a spouse. And then there's divorce. There's also separation. There's also being fired from a job. And all the way down at the very bottom is like a minor traffic infraction, like jaywalking. Believe it or not, it's on the stress score. So we have these varying degrees of what stress could actually look like. But what we're doing is we're triggering our cortisol. And that is the stress hormone. But the one that I'm talking about today is things that are like this low-level, low-grade stress that we're experiencing on a daily basis. And that might happen when you hate your job. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of scenarios because we're all dealing with it. It could be that you hate your job. It could be that you're also with a disrespectful coworker and you can't stand being in the same room with them. It could be that you have a calendar that is so full without white space that you end up overwhelmed. It could also be that you're wearing tight clothes. I mean, who of us does not have clothes in our closet that just doesn't necessarily fit? All of this, believe it or not, even the wearing the tight clothes is this low-level stressor. And then we have all the other hormone things on top of that, like waking up at 2:00 in the morning, having a lot of coffee in the morning just to get going. And we end up in this constant low-grade chronic stress response that keeps us in a fight or flight. And I think you've all heard what fight or flight is. It's that primal brain that is scared and keeps you in survival mode. And the opposite end of that is rest and digest. And when we're in this low-grade chronic type of stress response, we can kind of stay in there. What we want is we actually want to be more in the rest and digest. Rest and digest is the best place to be. It's the grooviest place to be. So think of it as that's where we are more fertile. We are more frisky. We're more creative. We're able to heal, and we're able to repair. Our hormones are humming along and really happy. It's also where we experience that love hormone, oxytocin. One of the things that I experienced when I was working in the ICU in New York City. I've worked in many ICUs, but this one in particular, we would lower the lights at night, and that was really important. So think about that. Like really bright lights is also a little bit of a stress response, gets you out of that rest and digest. Loud sounds, the constant fluorescent lights, things like that. That's what could actually keep you in a stress state. And when you're in the hospital, obviously, if you're in the ICU, you want to heal. So what the nurses would do is we would all, I was one of the nurses, and we would all lower the lights, we were really strict with visiting hours, and we would make sure that any sort of beeps and pings were kind of buffered in some way. We knew the importance of getting into rest and digest because that's where you heal. And believe it or not, that's also where you lose weight. Okay, so we get stressed. Our body secretes cortisol, the stress hormone, and then we have a high blood sugar. From that high blood sugar, in comes insulin, which is another hormone. And the job of insulin is to lower your blood sugar. A high blood sugar is also another stress response in the body. The body sees a high blood sugar as an emergency. And so insulin's going to come in and usher it into the cells. And that's the first place it goes. So think of insulin as like a key. It's going to open the door to the cells. The doors are going to open like a little subway car, usher all the sugar in, and then the doors get shut. But many times there's a lot of sugar left over because many times we're eating a lot of sugar or we're under a lot of stress. So all that extra sugar has to be put somewhere. Again, it is a stressor. It's an emergency for the body. So insulin is going to take that extra sugar and put it in your fat cells. So think of insulin as like a fat storage hormone. And every time that we trigger insulin from high blood sugar, insulin is going to put it in your fat cells. And so if you think of insulin as this fat storage hormone, it also deposits fat in your belly. So that's the stress belly, because we have so many cortisol receptors in our visceral, which is our belly fat, our belly area. But remember, this is something that we actually need. We need sugar in order to survive and outrun a tiger. It's not necessarily bad. We're supposed to be able to go from fight or flight into rest and digest very easily. But if we are in this constant low humming type of stress, then we're not really moving into rest and digest as often as we would like. And we're not losing weight as often as we would like. Getting the body to lose weight, you have to get into a rest and digest. Okay, let's talk about hormones and how they actually affect us in this dilemma as well. So estrogen is actually a hormone that obviously we have a lot of when we're younger. And as we get into our perimenopausal years, it starts to fluctuate. It goes up and down. And estrogen buffers the cortisol effects. When we have enough estrogen or a lot of estrogen, we're able to deal with the effects of cortisol much better. So remember, it's not just that we have extra blood sugar in our veins. It's also that our heart rate goes up, our pupils dilate, our blood pressure goes up. And all of these things that kind of get you going, it will affect you and affect your anxiety levels and affect how you handle the stress. When we have more estrogen, we're able to handle those stressors a lot better and we're able to process them better. What we used to be able to experience now is much more difficult for us. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but things that you used to be able to handle are now a little bit more difficult. I'll give you an example in my own life is that when our kids were younger, we used to watch the show Dexter, not with the kids, but my husband and I would watch Dexter, and it was like one of our favorite shows, like no joke. If you're not familiar with the show Dexter, it's about a serial killer who you're rooting for. It's somebody like, he's a horrible, horrible serial killer. And it's a pretty gruesome show. But the entire time that you're watching it, or when I was watching it back when I had estrogen, I love the show. And definitely rooting for Dexter, hoping that he would get away with all of it. So recently we watched Dexter again and literally could not deal with it. I had to leave the room. I was like, I cannot believe I used to love this show. What on earth was I thinking? It was really, really hard to sit through. I've also seen it with my clients. One of my clients also can't drive with her husband. I can relate. She can't drive in the car with her husband. The movement of the cars can be very difficult for the brain in that type of stress state. And I had a client recently tell me that she was in the movie theaters watching Jurassic Park 2 and she could not handle it. She had to leave. So if you're noticing these types of things, this is why. So as we have less estrogen, we're also not able to handle the high blood sugar as well. We're not as sensitive to insulin. So insulin is not going to be able to do its job as well. So it's not going to be able to usher the sugar into the cells. In fact, it's just going to go straight to storage of the sugar into the cells and creating fat storage. So that I can actually verify. This is something I can literally verify that happened to me, is that I was wearing a continuous blood glucose monitor because I'm my biggest science experiment, of course. And I was running late. I was trying to get out the door. I was jumping in the shower, doing my hair, getting the makeup on, getting the shoes. Sometimes I don't even put my shoes on before I get in the car. Sometimes I don't put like my earrings in until I'm at a traffic light. But imagine, and of course, I'm like, I get in the car and I forget something and I got to run out and I got to go get my phone, or I'm sure it's something that I forgot. It always happens to me. And that's where I literally saw the blood glucose monitor start to ding because my blood sugar was almost at 200. So it wasn't because I was eating a Snickers bar. It was literally because I was rushing. So this is like the effect of rushing and even minor stress, things that you're like might blow off or like that you might not even think of as a big deal. Even a hot shower can increase your stress response. And so that's why we really want to, I think, if anything, this is going to illustrate how incredibly sensitive our bodies are to stress at this time, because we're just not able to handle the stress response as well as we used to because of the loss of estrogen. So we really want to double down on these types of activities that can bring our cortisol levels down. And I'll tell you that at the end. I'll give you a 4-step process to do that. But the other thing that you need to know is that stress not only raises your blood sugar, but it also stops your digestion and it messes with your sleep. And so all of these things kind of like add up to the whole picture of why you're not losing weight, causing this weight loss resistance. So if you're not digesting, think about that. You're running, like we're trying to run away from a tiger. Of course, your body is not going to be putting blood flow to your stomach if you ate. It's going to be moving blood flow and blood sugar to the major muscle groups because you got to outrun that tiger. You're also going to be more alert and ready to go. So digestion's going to slow down. You're not going to be moving food through your system, and that's called motility. So you're not pooping. And if you're not pooping, you're not losing weight. That's another key. It's also affecting other hormones because it's a nutrient drain. Processing cortisol for your body to get rid of the cortisol as a byproduct, all of these processes take a lot of nutrients. And so it's taking nutrients from other parts of your systems, like your hormones, like your thyroid hormones, for example. All of these are being a little bit depleted because of the stress hormones and the need to process them. And I don't know about you, but if I'm stressed out, I'm also probably not drinking too much water. I'm also maybe not eating as much as I should. And when the body can sense that you're maybe not getting enough calories, that itself will shut down your metabolism a little bit. And even if you're not getting enough sunlight. So keep that in mind. Okay, so what's the takeaway? This is the acronym CALM. And the first letter in the acronym CALM is C. And here's what I want you to do. Just think about clarifying why you want to lose weight. And if you think about that stress scale that we talked about, I mean, there are some big things in there. Maybe it's not the best time to lose weight. Maybe it's just a better time to support yourself with good nutrition and good habits and save weight loss for another time, another season of your life. But if you're dealing with these major like major annoyances or minor annoyances or things that are going to keep you in this low grade stress state, then write those down. What is causing the stress for you on a daily basis? Is it that you're overwhelming yourself? Is it that you're putting too much on your calendar and you're not giving yourself enough white space? And that really signifies like an imbalance in your resources. If we easily get overwhelmed if you have too many demands and then you don't have enough resources to support yourself. The next letter is A. And for A, we want to activate that rest and digest. We want to activate that groovy state so that we can lose the weight. And that would be by doing things that trigger your vagus nerve, which is one of the biggest nerves in your body. And that in itself will slow down your heart rate and get you to relax. There are lots of other things that you can do to activate your rest and digest, like yoga, deep breathing, breath work, all sorts of things. Then L in the acronym would be let it go. And that's very hard for us, I can imagine. So perfectionism is an indicator of weight regain. It's a huge indicator of weight regain. So the idea of letting things go, it can be a little bit of a challenge, but we want to also understand when we're not allowing ourselves to delegate, when we're not allowing other people to step in and help us out. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to link the perfectionism and the weight regain article in the show notes so you can see that for yourself. And the last letter in the CALM acronym is M for mindset. And this is very interesting because they've done studies with caregivers who are taking care of very sick family members. And you can imagine the stress that they're under. This one study, and I'll link it in the show notes, took 2 cohorts, and one of the groups looked at stress as a threat, and another group looked at stress as a challenge, meaning like it was a puzzle to be solved. And what they did was they measured the growth of their hippocampus. They measured other stress markers, inflammatory markers, and they noticed that those that were perceiving the stress as a threat ended up having shorter telomeres, which is aging, which means that you're aging faster. And the ones that considered their situation a challenge were actually able to rebound faster from the higher cortisol levels. So that in itself is really telling that it can affect even down to the cellular level and even our DNA. So stress is a big deal. It will age you. It will cause inflammatory cytokines and markers to elevate. It will cause other things that we will discuss on the show. But we want to understand that the mindset is really, really important. So if you are in a stress situation, we want to get the mindset of, this is something I can handle. This is something that I can do. Even ask yourself some quality questions like, how is this for me? How is this actually benefiting me? When I was in nursing school, I had to follow another nurse on the floor for about 200 hours. And the nurse that they put me with was really, in my opinion at the time, was not great. It was not a great trainer. I was really kind of stressed out about the whole thing. And I was thinking, how am I going to get through this? And one of the things that I did was, before I left and I had to be on the floor by 7:00, I really sat down, and instead of looking at this person who, in my opinion, in my little nurse opinion at that time, was that she's really not that great of a instructor. What am I going to do here? I looked at it as, what is actually good about this situation? How is she actually a good nurse? And how is she the right instructor for me at this time? So if you can start to flip and reframe and ask yourself some quality questions, it's going to change your mindset 100%. And when I was listening to a Huberman Lab on stress and weight gain, the doctor that he was interviewing, I think her name was Dr. Eppel, the way she looks at stress is she tells herself, you've got the antelope and you've got the lion, and both are in a stress state. The antelope is fighting for their life, and the lion is fighting to get a dinner. And they're both in a stress state, but one is actually looking forward to the outcome. So in other words, she says, be the lion. And so That is another example of how you can change your mindset. We didn't even talk about stress eating, and I actually have a mini course on stress eating, and I'll give you a code so that you will get a discount. Thank you so much for listening. This was my first episode, and I'm so excited that you guys were here. We didn't even discuss that stress eating, so make sure that you look at that mini course, and the code is, I feel like its password is HSS15. Okay. So right now, I want you to remember this. Right now is your window of health. Now, whatever you do now is going to affect you for decades to come. And this is really good news. It's not the end. This is our pivot point, ladies. I would love to hear what you try. Please let me know. And remember that the best version of you is just a few decisions away. I'm Leslie Duffy, and this is the Hormone Shift Show.